Mr. Speaker, the United States Census Bureau has just announced that California once again leads the nation in poverty, has the highest poverty rate according to the widely accepted supplemental measure of any state in the country, 15.4%. The Public Policy Institute of California, when you expand this definition to include those living at or near poverty, the number estimates the number to be at 31.1%. To put that in perspective, an adult with one child living in San Francisco, one study found, would have to work 22 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to cover basic living expenses. Now, this is significant not only because it means life is more difficult than it needs to be for millions of people in our state, but also because our governor, Gavin Newsom, has said that California is a model for the nation. And another Californian, Vice President Kamala Harris, has said that California is a role model for what can be done around the country. Newsom even recently put out a press release titled 10 Ways California Leads the Nation. It's the title of his press release, 10 Ways California Leads the Nation. Now, the items on this list ranged from the meaninglessly vague, like belonging and unity, to the downright farcical, like transportation, with Newsom citing high-speed rail, even though the New York Times estimates that the California high-speed rail won't be completed this century. And even if it is completed, it will be the slowest and most expensive high-speed train in the world. But what wasn't on Newsom's list, of course, of the 10 ways California leads the nation, is poverty, even though California has held that dubious distinction for many years running. So I thought I'd take a moment this morning to go through a few other things that were not on Newsom's list. That is, a few other ways in which California leads the nation, and yet that he neglected to include on his press release. In addition to poverty, California also leads the nation in homelessness. In fact, it was just announced our homeless population grew again to 186,000 people. At this point, over half the unsheltered homeless in the entire country are in California. California also leads the nation when it comes to crime. On the list of the cities with the worst retail theft problems, California is by far the most represented of any state in the country, and that's one of the reasons businesses are closing left and right, especially in our major cities like San Francisco. If you are a business trying to operate in California, especially a small business, California leads the nation in many ways. California leads the nation in terms of having the worst business climate, routinely rated as having the most business-unfriendly set of regulations. California also, for that reason, leads the nation in business departures. California also leads the nation as being the #1 judicial hellhole. That's the technical term that's used in rating California as having the most frivolous lawsuits of any state in the country. If you're a worker, California also leads the nation. For most of this year, we've been #1 out of the 50 states in unemployment. In the last few years, California has been #1 out of the 50 states in wage stagnation. That is, worker wages have gone up less in California than in any other state. California is also #1 when it comes to restrictions on worker freedom, being rated as having the most onerous and arbitrary restrictions on the right to earn a living, including, most egregiously, Assembly Bill 5, one of the most notorious laws in the history of the United States. If you're just trying to get by and raise a family, California leads the nation in all the wrong ways when it comes to the cost of living. We have the highest gas prices of any state in the country, about $1.50 above the national average. We're routinely in the top 5 when it comes to the cost of energy and electricity. We're #2 in the country when it comes to your water bills. We're #2 when it comes to the cost of housing, #1 in the continental United States. Only Hawaii has higher housing costs than California does. And largely because of all this, we are routinely in the top few states in the entire country when it comes to inequality, as measured by the Gini coefficient. Progressive California leading the nation in inequality. If you're a citizen expecting a basic standard of service when it comes to public services, Well, California also leads the nation in dubious ways. We have the highest taxes of any state, highest income tax, highest gas tax. We have not only the largest budget, but by far the largest budget deficit. This last year, $68 billion budget deficit in California. Many other states were running a surplus. California also leads the nation in debt, or our hundreds of billions of dollars in unfunded liabilities. Yet despite all of this spending, California leads the nation in terms of the disrepair of our roads, usually being in the top few states rated in terms of the lowest quality of our roads. Our schools are also rated as among the worst in the country. We lead the nation in illiteracy. That is, we have the lowest literacy rate in the United States. We also lead the continental United States when it comes to achievement gaps in our schools. Our education outcomes for students living in poverty are worse than any other state in the continental U.S. Only Alaska does worse for the whole country. Now, this Newsom leadership was compounded during COVID-19. California led the nation in school shutdowns, was the slowest of any state to get our kids back to school. Also led the nation, first out of any state, in business shutdowns, in church shutdowns. California led the nation in mandates. For example, being the only state, Newsom being the only governor, to announce a student vaccine mandate. And yet California also was the slowest state in the country in actually getting therapeutics to people who wanted them. Now, there is one group for whom California's leadership, Gavin Newsom specifically, his leadership, might be viewed favorably, and that is illegal immigrants. Currently, the San Diego border sector has the most illegal border crossings of any sector in the country. That's the first time that has been the case since the 1990s. And California also leads when it comes to the amount of money spent on illegal immigrants, being the only state in the entire country to offer free health care to everyone in the state illegally. Now, as a result of all of this, California finally leads the nation in one other way, and that is in U-Haul departures, U-Haul rentals. On a per capita basis, California has now led the nation 4 straight years when it comes to outmigration, the number of people leaving. The effect is particularly pronounced in Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris's San Francisco, a city that, as it was put in the newspaper of record, the San Francisco Chronicle, is literally on the verge of collapse, and in fact has been losing population faster than any major city in U.S. history, faster even than Detroit when it went bankrupt. Now, a former governor of ours, Ronald Reagan, in his inaugural address as governor, said that California should never take second place, but this was not what he had in mind, us leading the nation in all of the wrong ways. So when Gavin Newsom says California is a model for the nation, when Kamala Harris says California is a role model for what can be done around the country, we can look at what's happened to our state for what the consequence of taking that playbook national will be. It will mean more poverty. It will mean more homelessness. It'll mean more crime, more inequality, a diminishment of economic opportunity, and an increase in the cost of living. The good news, however, is that California is not politically monolithic, and that in my district in particular, we have established a different model where we support law enforcement. We have compassionate and common sense policies when it comes to things like homelessness. We support our workers and our small businesses. We are mindful of how we spend taxpayer dollars in a prudent way. And because of that, we have maintained a quality of life, fighting against the headwinds of state policy that is much different than in places like San Francisco or Los Angeles and Oakland. And it's why, while people are leaving California as a whole, they are wanting to move into my district. In fact, it's the fastest growing part of California, in some sense some of the fastest growing communities in the entire country. So I am very proud of the model that we have established in my communities. And I think that actually you're starting to see that spread to the rest of California. That is, while Newsom and Harris say California is a model for the rest of the country, Californians themselves are starting to reject that model in our own state. We're starting to see, after the Supreme Court's Grants Pass decision, homeless encampments finally being broken up and folks being brought to services and getting to shelters and getting connected with the services that they need. We're seeing reckless district attorneys being recalled from office. We're seeing cities that defunded their police departments now refunding their police departments. And we're seeing one of the worst laws in the history of our state and maybe even the country, Proposition 47, which is largely responsible for the increase in crime and homelessness and conditions of disorder in our cities, is on the verge of being repealed, at least in its major provisions. There's an initiative, a citizen-led initiative on the ballot right now that Gavin Newsom has fought tooth and nail every step of the way, but that it has overwhelming public support. That according to a recent poll from the LA Times has the support overwhelmingly not just of Republican voters and independent voters, but also Democrat voters by a 19-point margin. And I believe that when this initiative passes, it will be a new day for California, that we will finally turn the page on the failed model of Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, and we can perhaps one day, as Reagan said, start leading the nation in the right ways again.